The race in Shanghai begins in 5 lights time. The Chinese Grand Prix is underway.
Hey, I'm Sunity, and welcome back to Pit Stop Sweets and Treats, where we make one authentic dessert inspired by every single stop on the F1 calendar in 2026. We are in round 2 in Shanghai, China, and we're making a traditional dessert inspired by our hosting country today, which is going to be red bean buns or Bean Baos. I'm not saying that right. So something about me is I love red bean. It's one of my favorite things. Teriyaki, red bean boba, sesame balls. I love red bean. So let's learn the history of the dessert as we make our dough. You can totally do this by hand. I'm using my stand mixer because I don't want to do this for 10 minutes by hand. So from my research, zuki beans were used in the filling, aka red beans, were domesticated to China around the year 3000 BC. From there, they were incorporated as a filling in pastries such as mooncakes. For centuries throughout Chinese culture, red bean has been used. I'm going to add 350 grams of all-purpose flour, followed by 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of just regular granulated sugar, along with 2 teaspoons of instant dry yeast, 1.5 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and finally, 180 grams of lukewarm water. We're going to attach our dough hook here, and then we're going to beat this on low for about 8 minutes till dough forms. As we've seen in previous desserts, Buddhists had influence on this treat because originally Chinese buns were stuffed with meat and veggies, but as Buddhists often are vegetarians, they were looking for an alternative, and they turned to making a filling using zuki beans. They then coined these sweet buns as a staple in Chinese cuisines and dim sum. The Chinese version is served all throughout China, is steamed, and specifically in northern China, they also have a dim sum version that they serve. While our dough is going, let's get into some track history and facts. The first Grand Prix was held in 2004 after a martial land in Shanghai earned the right to host a race in April of 2003, as a place the FIA wanted to expand to was China. It took 18 months, about $450 million, and the Shanghai International Circuit was then created. 2020 to 2023, due to COVID cancellations, the race disappeared from the calendar. It was there, but the race did not happen between 2020 and 2023, but it came back in 2024. The circuit is the shape of the Chinese character shang and means upward. Quick facts, the circuit is 5.451 kilometers in length and has a total of 56 laps. When the race is complete, the drivers will have traveled 305.066 kilometers in distance. The current lap record is held by Michael Schumacher from his 2004 lap at 1 minute 32 seconds, 0.238 hundredths of a second. Our dough has formed. I did add some extra water and some flour to get the perfect consistency. It should be very soft, but not sticky. So you can see I'm kind of like pinching it. The recipe says that's what to do if it's not forming correctly. So you kind of just have to eyeball it. So we're going to pull it off here, and we're going to start making our bun. I'm going to take my dough here, and then I have a bench scraper. You can use a knife, whatever you want. I'm going to split the dough. So we're going to make about 14 even slices, but whatever dough you're not using, you're going to want to make sure to cover. So I just have some cling wrap here, and I'm just going to cover it and set it aside. And while we do this, we're going to talk about this week's news. So I'm just going to roll this with my hands. It's so soft. You want it to be really soft into a little caterpillar log. And then obviously, since this is half, we should be able to get about 7 pieces from this. I want to know why there's a sprint so early in the season with new regulations, if I'm being honest. I don't see the point. We've gotten used to everyone finishing the race. We are now playing if you finish the race. So I'm going to roll these into a circle. And then again, I'm just going to cover them while I work. Last week, I have this tiny little rolling pin. Isn't it so cute? So I'm just going to roll first. And yes, I do know not all of these balls are equal. Kind of just rolled edges in the tissue. So the edges, you want the edges to be like thinner than center. Okay, this isn't working. Hold on. I took the rolling mechanical is apart because it wasn't working for me. I have like 10 of these. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to put pleated ones just out of view, I think. But I'm going to put them over here and then I'm going to fold them over. You just don't want your dough to dry, obviously. So we talked last week about the rumors that because of the U.S. being the U.S., that races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are probably going to be canceled or moved to a different location. Well, it seems like those are all but confirmed because the Tom Hollands of the track, last year's rookies, were seen talking on a flight coach, mind you, not private jet. The Giggle sisters, that round 4 and 5 in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are canceled with no replacements. Now, I think they haven't announced this yet for 2 reasons. It is believed that the dumb person in charge of this country that I live in is probably going to cease operations. So there would be no need to cancel. But at the same time, I think they have about 2 weeks before Japan. So they have time to find a replacement in places. That way they don't lose all the money from canceling the race with no replacement. Might even be a situation where they move it during break in August, which would suck, but then we kind of get another month off in April. So we'll see. Toto Wolff seems to be selling some of his stock in order to buy stock in Alpine. Now, I'm usually against different teams have equity in other teams, but it seems like he is doing this because he is petty to keep Christian Horner out of the paddock for good, because those were the stocks it seemed Christian Horner was interested in. And you know what? Do it. I'm okay with chaotic, good, evil. F1 Academy is back this weekend. Very, very exciting. I will be watching. We now have Sephora on the grid in replacement for Charlotte Tilbury. So I didn't realize this till I read the comments that McLaren's, I know one of their main sponsors, Google Gemini AI, that they are using AI for their promotional photos, like promotional location photos. I'll pop one on screen that I'm talking about. And you know what? That's disgusting. But also, I'm more disgusted at myself that I didn't realize the photo I was looking at was AI. Also, we should talk about one day how F1 is the way to see what is now going to go down the drain next in tech. Because a couple years ago, all the sponsors were crypto. Then for the past couple seasons, it was stake, like the gambling. Now, every single team has an AI sponsor. I think it's a good indicator of what businesses are trying to make money before they go down the drain. I wanted to say, as a follow-up to last week, there are ads on Apple TV. I was watching FP1 last night, but I watch everything on my iPad. I was watching it on my iPad, but I still needed to work on my daily planner, basically, on my iPad. So I played on Apple TV because the F1 app doesn't allow you to do multi-viewer. And it's almost impossible to do dual screen now on an iPad. That literally, I was sitting there in shock. Anyways, there are ads. So specifically with Holly, where between, Q1 stops and then they go back to the garage, they recuperate, then they get ready to go and run again. That moment. And then the analysts are looking at everything and saying, oh, this is what they should do. And near the end, so-and-so ran off track and they did this and this. And I think that's what they're thinking about. Yeah. That's where they put ads in on Apple TV. So you're missing, I think, some of the most important commentary in the whole session, if I'm being honest, because they're putting ads there. Now, the transition to an ad, genius. It's fast cars moving, but the actual use of an ad, I can't stand. So I think that's ridiculous. I will not be using Apple TV unless I absolutely have to. I will stick with F1 TV. So now I have some red bean paste. I just bought this ready to use. The recipe we're following does teach you how to make it from scratch, but I have used it in the past and I really liked it and I didn't want to mess up anything. So I just bought it cremate. So we're going to put a little in the center. And then I saw there's 2 ways to do this. You can pinch all 4 corners together and then pinch the little corners to it like this, and then turn it around and roll it a little. That's one way. Now, I have never made baos from scratch, okay? So I am a little rusty. I'm not perfect. If they look a little rough, they are. Oh no, my dough stuck together. I knew this was going to happen. Okay, so they kind of stuck together. Stay with me here though. Just doing a heaping teaspoon in each. Okay, so apparently you kind of just unfold around. You can see what I'm doing here. Just kneading and folding. Like pleats, I guess, is what you would say. So it kind of looks like that. Pinch it, turn it around, and then roll into a cute little ball. So for the thicker ones, I think I'll do the pleated method. And then for the smaller ones, I'll do the 4 corners method. So the problem is I stacked them all on top of each other. So now they're sticking to each other. And obviously they're looking more like rectangles than circles. So that sucks. I also want to change my prediction of World Driver Championship. I'm going to be honest. This is the one season, since I started watching the sport, where I have no idea what's going to happen. Usually I can predict, based off of rules. Since the rules changed, it doesn't seem like anyone knows what's going on, if I'm being honest. So I knew my prediction was a little out there because of the rule change. Everyone knew going into the season that Mercedes was the team to beat per se. Girl, McLaren might not even be on top. So I'm going to say Mercedes and George Russell, driver championship, constructor champion. It was ambitious of me to think that McLaren could have it in the bag, but McLaren cannot have it in the bag. Unless they do. We don't know. We don't know. It'd be interesting, though, is if rounds 4 and 5 are canceled, if teams are going to go back to the factories and like do everything they've done now that they kind of understand regulations better. I'd be interested in that aspect. Guys, they're not circles. I'm so sorry. This looks so wacky. I really am trying, but I shouldn't have stuck them on top of each other, and I know how bread works. So let's get into feminism and the hosting country. It's time to get a little dark, but as a woman in motorsports, sadly, that is something you should be used to. So I read a bunch of books on sports tourism and how sport as a whole works. Academically, I study gender studies, so I have a background in this, and I wanted to bring it to the series that is male-dominated. Quickly, why is it important to talk about feminism in hosting countries? Well, the main reason is sporting events are usually a good indicator of the demographic that lives in a country and what rules and regulations are going on in that country. So like, if you don't see women out in sporting events or children, it's probably because it's not safe for women or children to be there, or maybe they're banned or something like that. So I think that's why it's interesting to look at this. And then as a whole, sports tourism is a very interesting thing because usually countries use big sporting events to cover up horrendous dealings the government is doing to their own citizens because it's a big splashy event. Think of the World Cup being hosted in the US this coming summer. There are efforts to be moving it completely out of the States. Many sources that I'm using have come from Chinese descent, but are living in different countries, namely Europe and the US. So take this with a grain of salt because we are talking about the Chinese diaspora, and there are sometimes things that get lost in translation or by generation in retellings. You probably have heard of the one-child law policy preferring boys and how that put the whole country back because during the time period where the one-child policy was in effect, people would terminate pregnancies where they thought it was a girl. So now that one-child policy, children have grown up. There's a huge disproportion of men to women who are from that generation. So these men are looking for brides elsewhere from other countries, or the women are having a good choice of who they want to marry. And it's both ways. Like there's violence towards women because of men wanting the woman, so they resort to violence. And there's women who can be a little more picky. And there's different levels to that. It does have to do with class. First wave of Chinese feminism encouraged the turn of the 20th century, led primarily by male intellectuals and nationalists. So it wasn't even women advocating for themselves. It was like men intellectuals who were doing it. They thought it was like the next step. So what we're going to do now is I have 2 steamer baskets. They're not steamer. Well, this is a steamer basket. This is a strainer. I'm going to put the bows in here, not touching at all. And then I do have some parchment on them so they don't stick. Is this perfect? No. Is this what I have my hands on? Yes. So we're going to make it work. We are going to leave these in the pots they're going to steam in. The water is already in there, but it's not being heated. We're going to leave these to rise for about 30 minutes till they're nice and soft and fluffy. Remember, we just made a basic bread at the beginning. So now we need the bread to rise and have the yeast actually do its job. So that's what we're going to do. It's been 30 minutes. I've had my water boiling for the past like 20 minutes. It's just the bottom. That way it doesn't actually touch the steamers or our impromptu steamer, honestly. I'm going to place the buns that have doubled in size in each of their respective pots and then cover with the lid. Now, I did use little pieces of parchment paper in between each bun because I don't want them to stick together. They were sticking during the proofing process, and I don't want that to happen again. We're going to cover them and steam for about 10 minutes while we finish our feminism mini lecture. China's women's protection law took effect in early 2023. The law includes new regulations aimed at protecting women in the workplace, particularly against sexual harassment. It also contains a provision that promotes the notion of respecting family values for women, namely that they should be mothers and wives first before anything else. Chinese feminist movement has experienced tightening regulations, including political smearing, censorship of speech, dilution of activist effort, the dissolution of organizational structures down to the micro level. However, the rise of resentment is not due to women being more oppressed, but because they have reached a point where they can no longer tolerate it. So it's now up in limbo. Traditional values of the culture while also moving forward into a 21st century woman is what China is dealing with right now. You can see the steam coming out of the pots. Now the orange pot doesn't have a lid, and also that's not a real steamer. That is a strainer in there. We got to do what we got to do. I did line everything with parchment. That way it didn't get stuck to anything. But I also poked holes in those parchment through the holes in the strainers. So it's all cohesive. The buns are getting bigger as they cook. Our buns have finished steaming, so I'm going to place them on this little platter right here. That way they can be pulled off the heat. Some of them did stick, so that is an issue. But I'm just using these like tongs instead of my hands. We are back over here, so I'm going to just place the cutest ones on this tray over here. They're absolutely huge. I know they're not supposed to be this big, but they are. So it is what it is. And let's go ahead and try one of the ones I have ripped in half. That was scrumdiddlyumptious. Really good. I'm going to have to give it a 7.5 out of 10 red pandas. The only reason I'm not giving this a higher score is because the bun itself, the bread part, is kind of lackluster. It has a good flavor, like a neutral flavor, but I think just a little more sugar or maybe some salt to even it out would take this up a notch. In the past, I have made tanghulu and sesame balls. The sesame balls are number one in my heart. I love them so much. This I'm going to rank 2 out of 3 from the 3 years we've done this, so it's still pretty good. Again, I love anything red bean. I will be eating most of these. Well, I'll probably freeze most of them to eat over the next couple months. I'm eating more, but they're super springy and super soft. They're perfect. Obviously, my technique is not there. I've never made baos before from hand, so I'm sorry, I just keep eating them. Let's do race predictions. I've only seen FP1 and sprint quali at this point. I have no idea what the starting grid looks like. Because North is P3, like sprint quali, I'm gonna say a Mercedes double podium. I'm thinking it might be Kimi's maiden podium, and then I will say Norris P3. I'm not sure. Honestly, I still need to get a feel of this land before I can commit to accurate predictions. At this point, who knows? So before we go, let's do memes of the week. I did collect quite a few, so hang in there. It smells like fresh baked bread in here. This is how I felt watching Australia. Usually I can listen to a broadcast and understand exactly what's happening. I don't even have to look at my screen. I could even look at the car dots that go around the track. I could not understand what was happening.
Only on your 4th round can you collect 2 tokens. Once you've collected your 2 tokens, that's when you can apply for immunity.
Boost sounds like something straight out of Mario Kart. Yeah. Active arrow? Girl, I don't even think the sport understands what's happening right now. Apparently, there's already rule regulations changing. Another video, I did not know George Russell was like a K-pop level idol in China. They're putting fan freaking edits on the big screen. We have these about Kimi Antonelli and Isaac Hadjar being the Tom Holland, spoiling things, hilarious if it's true. Love that for him. Okay, this is about Mercedes. I love that like they're tagging BTS. Girl, so random. Love that for them. I'm actually going to see BTS. That's a side note. The Ferrari one, that was all of us last week. Like, you don't want to spook them, and somehow we spook them. And then this one, I was watching the video from F1, their YouTube channel themselves, of the new rules, and the comments took me out. Goodbye, DRS. Hello, DRS. In front and rear rings with a new, different name. Leclerc, why can't I use boost? Engineer, it must be the battery. As a Ferrari Tifosi, hearing the engineers and drivers have to work together even more just makes me depressed even more. Remove DRS for it being called an overtake button. Added a literal overtake button. I can't wait to see how they change these regulations for next season because obviously it's not going to last long term. But that is all I have for you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. We still have the rest of the F1 calendar to get through. All my social media is linked down below. Follow me if you want. And I will see you in 2 weeks for the Japan Grand Prix with another authentic dessert incorporating one of my favorite things. I'll see you next race Sunday. Bye!